Hey guys, Language Hacker here, and today I'm going to bring to you my review for the Maw and Disorder mini set coming to Hearthstone, which is going to be live, I imagine, around when this video comes out as well. So, it's going to be pretty quick, see if you can keep up. Let's go through all the new cards coming out. So, first up, Demon Hunter cards. Prosecutor Multranix. It's a 4-mana 2/6. It's a demon battlecry. Your opponent can only play their left and rightmost cards on the next turn. This card is incredibly powerful, probably the best card in the set. Or in the mini set, rather. It's very, very good at disruption. It may not seem that bad because you can still play the left and rightmost cards, but it's very good. Especially, it could also be very good in aggressive Demon Hunters as well. Not just, I mean, in general, it's a very strong card, but it can be very nice if you're being an aggressive, archetype, and then you just lock your opponent out of a turn. We're definitely going to see this come down. People are just going to, like, pass hero power pass and then get very upset about it. This card is insane. Very, very strong. Sightless Magistrate, 4/5/4, Battlecry. Both players draw until they have 5 cards. This isn't that bad, but I don't think this is going to be an auto-include 2 of in aggressive Demon Hunter lists. I don't think it's going to be included much elsewhere either. It can only really be run in aggressive archetypes. Technically OTK, but we don't really have OTK decks right now for Demon Hunter anyways. So, seems a bit expensive for a card draw tool in aggressive Demon Hunter when we already have some available. It's okay, not great. I don't expect it to see much play. If we do, I think it's going to be like a 1-of. All Fel breaks loose. 5-mana Fel spell. Summon a friendly demon that died this game. Infuse 3 demons. This is also relatively new. Infuse is a mechanic that came out in Castle Nathria, but now it's infused 3 demons for this specific card. So that means only demons that die infuse this. Summon 3 instead. This card is garbage. Nope. The idea is cool, but I mean, nope. It's more support for big DH, but big DH isn't really playable. All right, next. Let's talk about Druid. Attorney at Maw. 2-mana 1/3. Choose one. Silence a minion, or give a minion immune this turn. This is pretty good. Cheap silence, kind of like a starfish that you see run in Druids earlier this expansion, but now you run a cheaper one. The stat line doesn't matter that much. It's a cheaper one with some upside because now you can buff a friendly minion to give it immune this turn as well. It doesn't have to be friendly minion, it can be any minion actually. Not that you'd want to immune your... Regardless, this card's pretty good. Tech card, not auto-include. Seems fine. Could be included potentially in an aggro druid, but I think it's going to be used more as a tech card than an aggressive tool. Next up, Due Process, 2-mana nature spell. For the rest of the game, players draw an extra card at the start of their turn. This is a very, very druid card, right? Be greedy and hope you don't die and then win off the back of that. This card's not that great because you're paying mana for a 2-sided effect where both you and your opponent are benefiting from it. And generally, you don't want to pay mana to give your opponent stuff too. So I don't think this card's very good. We might see it occasionally picked off of Planted Evidence, perhaps, and it could be included as a 1-of in some very specific archetypes, but I don't think this is going to be... I mean, you would include it as a 2-of in some specific archetypes, but it's not a standalone good card. It's a very... it'll be conditionally useful. And the third card here for Druid is Incarceration. 3 mana, choose a minion. It goes dormant for 3 turns. This card's pretty good. Along with the Druid game plan of be greedy and then don't die and win with the greed, this helps, right? You can ramp, your opponent still has a big minion pushing face, and then after you ramp, bam, make it dormant, deal with it later. Pretty good card. Next up, we have Hunter. Motion denied. 2-mana spell. Secret, after your opponent plays 3 cards in a turn, deals 6 damage to the enemy hero. This card sucks. Nothing for board. There's not too many secret synergies that Hunter really wants to play in standard right now. And this can't hit minions or anything. So it's good at going face, but if your opponent knows you're playing this, they're going to play around it, so you spent 2 mana doing nothing. You spent 2 mana inhibiting their turns, which means they can't play 3 things at once, but you'd only be playing this in a very hyper-aggressive deck, and you'd rather spend 2 mana doing something else. So, not a very good card. Next up, as soon as we get there, Shadehound, 5-mana 6/5. It's a beast. Whenever this attacks, give your other beasts +2/+2. Infuse with 3 beasts, gain rush. This is okay, but it lends itself to a slower Hunter, which honestly we have been seeing some of, especially lately with the 40-card big Hunter package. And this could be very powerful in a Harpoon Gun deck. I think this card's actually got some potential. Generally, I'm very pessimistic about slow, expensive hunter cards, but Harpoon Gun is a hell of a card. So I think this card's pretty good. It also synergizes with the other beasts, namely the Wild Seeds, because the Wild Seeds come up from being dormant. Your opponent can't interact with them on their turn, and then you can buff them immediately with this if it does have Rush. So this actually I could see being played. Maybe even in the existing Hunter deck that we have now, we might slot some stuff out for it. Defense Attorney, Nathanos. 6/5/4, Battlecry, discover a friendly Death Rattle minion that died this game. Trigger and gain its Death Rattle. So that Death Rattle minion has to have died that game. The Death Rattle triggers, and this body, the 6/5/4, gains the Death Rattle. The effect is strong, but what Death Rattles are we running? Mountain Bear's pretty good, I suppose, but that would require Mountain Bear already having died, so this is a very slow card. You could have like a smaller Death Rattle die, like a Baddie Guest or something. This card seems too slow for me. There's some payoffs you can get here, but I think it's a little inconsistent, and one of the things Hunter needs right now to support its bigger beasts that are being run is some early games. So I'm not super into running extra big expensive threats, especially that can't be discounted with Harpoon Gun, unless the payoff is super worth it, and I don't believe that there's enough Death Rattles off the top of my head that this is worth. So, meh. Alright, Hunter's done. Next up, Mage. Life Sentence, 4 mana spell. Remove a minion from the game. My understanding is that this is similar to the Amazing Reno hero, the Poof, where this just gets removed. It didn't die, so you can't like resurrect it or anything like that. So it's just gone. Poof. That's pretty good. This card is strong. Is Control Mage strong? Hard to say, but this card is very strong. Next up, we have Contract Conjurer. 6/6/6, costs 3 less for each secret you control. Suddenly we have some Secret Mage payoff. There do exist some more secrets that got printed in this this set. In Murder at Castle Nathria, there was Vengeful Visage and Chatty Bartender. And there are a few other secrets playable in Standard right now, so this could actually be okay. It's going to be hard to make it 0 mana. You'd have to be running Visage and be ahead on board, which isn't, you know, that difficult. I think this card's actually kind of good. I don't think it's going to push Secret Mage into oh crap territory. This is the nuttiest deck ever. But, you know, Secret Mage might be playable now with this. Also, there's one more card here. There we go. Objection. 3 mana secret. When your opponent plays a minion, counter it. So this is similar to the Blademaster Connie effect. The minion's battle cry doesn't go off. Like nothing happens. It just poofs. It's gone. This card's pretty good. Blademaster Connie's pretty good. The downside to this is that your opponent, if your opponent knows that you're playing secrets, this is something that they can play around. But it's not that easy to play around because you still have to. Unlike Blademaster Connie, where a Connie can be killed off, this can't really be interacted with until it procs, right? I don't think we have secret deactivation in Standard outside of Flare in Hunter. Actually, is Flare even in Standard? Regardless, it's not being played, but maybe it gets played. Anyways, this card's pretty good, and it can be kind of annoying to go up against this if Secret Mage does become a thing. So Mage got some pretty good stuff. Might not slot into every sort of Mage deck, but there is, you know, a Secret deck starting to pile up here, and Life Sentence I could see being run. It could be pretty useful, actually, at removing some of the Big Hunter, as an example, the Big Hunter threats, right? Just getting rid of a Mountain Bear completely. Could be pretty good. All right, Paladin. Order in the Court, 2 mana spell, reorder your deck from highest cost to lowest cost, draw a card. This card is insane. 2 mana draw a card is kind of meh, but this is the Lore Keeper Polkelt effect where your deck is put in order. You can immediately draw Lightforged Cariel, the hero, which is really good. You can immediately draw Dunboldar Bridge if you make a low curve, very aggressive token deck. This card is incredibly powerful, and even if it's not in its optimal meta right now, this card will definitely see play. Jury Duty, 3 mana spell, summon 2 Silverhand Recruits, give your Silverhand Recruits +1/+1. Meh, not enough Silverhand Recruit synergy for this card to be really worth it. This could pair together with like a Quest Paladin, but Quest Paladin's pretty meh. So this card's just not really useful right now. Maybe later with more support. Finally, Class Action Lawyer. This is a 2 mana 2/3, stat line's nice. Battlecry, if your deck has no neutral cards, set a minion's stats to 1/1. So this is more of the pure Paladin support. It's a good card in that sort of archetype too, because without something like this, Paladins pretty much just have to quality single targets, and that's kind of yucky sometimes, and you don't really want a quality board that's just small just because there's one big thing on it. So this can be quite useful. It's still also just a tempo play if you want to. And I mean, you can't really buff up your minions with this because it sets the stats to 1/1. And if you do have stuff on board and your opponent doesn't have any minions, this doesn't really want to be played because you have to do the battle cry when you play it. I think this is still a very good card, though. It sucks that it's in... I mean, I shouldn't say that it sucks that it's part of the Pure Paladin set, because if it didn't have that restriction, this card would be insane. Yeah, I don't know. This card's good. Pure Paladin isn't great, but this definitely helps the archetype a bit. Alright, next up. Priest. Theft Accusation. 1 mana shadow spell. Choose a minion. Destroy it after you play a card copied from the opponent. This card is awful. So, let's talk about cards that remove your opponent's stuff, right? Shadow Word Death. What cards are in Sander right now? I've been watching a little bit of Wild lately, so like wild cards are popping up in my head. Anyways, Whirlpool, Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Ruin, I believe, is still in. These are cards that they do something and then you kill a thing. I don't want to spend extra mana on top of the burgle cards that we're getting. There are some situations where this is good because of the cards you steal are cheap. That's great, but the steely kind of cards that Priest runs aren't... They're not strictly random. You discover them, right? Draconic Operative, Identity Theft. So it is weighted in your favor because you get to choose which cards you're taking, but it's still relatively random, right? Like if you discover from 3/6 mana plays, suddenly this card's really hard to play as removal. I don't think this card is bad, but I don't think it's insane. If we do see it run, it might be just like a one-of. But I'm skeptical about this. There also isn't quite enough steal synergy where you to the point where you always have thief cards in hand. So this is a conditional removal that has 2 layers of condition, right? You have to have thief cards and they have to be playable, which isn't really... And you have to have spent mana on the thief cards as well, right? Which piles up. So it is removal, and it is cheap removal, but it's quite conditional. So I'm a little skeptical about this. Clear Conscience, 3 mana, 2/3. It's a holy spell. Give a friendly minion +2/+3. And only you can target this with spells and hero powers. So you give it the Fairy Dragon... Oh, no, it's not the Fairy Dragon effect. It's your opponents can't target this effect. Yeah, this seems fine. You run this as maybe like a 1-of in Miracle Priest. Probably not a 2-of because it's a bit expensive, but as a 1-of in Miracle Priest, I could see this. That way your opponent can't deal with this with your minion without like a silence. So that's actually quite good. That's not bad. Cool. It's not super flexible, though. Priest doesn't really want to run this anywhere. So it's pretty much in like a buff deck. And in that sort of deck, you don't want too many expensive cards. You probably want a few cheaper stuff. So this might be just being 1-of. Next up, Incriminating Psychic. It's a 4 mana 2/6. It's a dragon, which is relevant for the Draconic Operative synergy we currently have in Priest. Taunt, Death Rattle, copy a random card from your opponent's hand. 4 mana 2/6, defensive stat line with Taunt, so it's a defensive minion. Makes sense because it has some value attached to it. Copy a random card from your opponent's hand. Random sucks. That's kind of unfortunate. It is extra value, right? It's a 4 mana 2/6 that replaces itself with cards that your opponent is running in their deck, which would theoretically be useful. And this adds more synergy with the other stealer cards. This is probably just good. Thief Priest is actually quite playable right now, and I'd wager even good. So adding more things that support that is great. This makes sense as a support card because it adds to it. The removal card I was talking about earlier, Theft Accusation, this requires synergy to be good. That's my concern with it, and it doesn't do anything unless you have that synergy. Whereas this 4 mana 2/6, the Incriminating Psychic, you just play it, you get some stuff. Like there's no restriction attached. I mean, the restriction is that your opponent has to have a card in hand, which is the... Anyways, next up, Murder Accusation, 2 mana spell. Choose a minion, destroy it after another enemy minion dies. That's pretty good. That's not bad. This could be a 1-of in the Miracle Rogue archetype we see now. You probably don't want 2 of these because it still requires you to spend cards on other stuff, and Rogue card draw isn't infinite, right? So you do need cards that support each other, right? It's good, but you might not want 2 of these. Perjury, 2 mana, secret. When your turn starts, discover and cast a secret from their class. This is awful. I don't like this. Let's move on. It's 2 mana to discover another secret a turn later, which is, it's delayed usefulness, and even then, it's going to be, I believe the way this is set up is you're going to get like a Paladin secret, 1 Paladin secret, 1 Mage secret, and a Hunter secret. So you will be able to choose one of those 3, but it's not even that useful because you could get some poopy secrets at the time. So I really don't like this. This card is awful. Last up, the Scribbling Stenographer. 6 mana, 4/4, rush, costs 1 less for each card you play this turn. This card's not very good. Same thing. Rogue has finite card draw right now, and you can't. If you're going to be dumping everything, you need to be winning the game with that dump. And this card does not win you the game. Edwin wins you the game. Necrolord Draka wins you the game. A couple of Knolls win you the game. Scribbling Stenographer does not win you the game. So because of that, I don't think you want that. This also dilutes the Shroud of Concealment pool in your deck when you are playing a Miracle-y type list, which means you have the Knolls less often, you have the Edwin less often, the Draka. So this Rogue did not get a whole lot here to work with. The Assassinate, which isn't bad, but it's also not that good. Totemic Evidence. 1 mana, choose a basic totem and summon it. Infuse. If 3 totems have died, summon all 4 instead. This could be pretty good together with something like Bioluminescence. The problem is totems have to die, which means we have to spend mana summoning totems, which means either the hero power or we can use the Carving Chisel. But then we have to run Carving Chisel in our deck. So, I don't know. There's potential with this, so I don't think this card is awful, but I mean, there also is some totem synergy with this. This card's not awful. This will see some play, but it's pretty conditional still. Framester, 3 mana, 3/3, Battlecry, shuffle 3 framed cards into the opponent's deck. When drawn, they overload for 2. This card's okay. This is just an RNG fiesta, right? I don't think this is really what we want to be doing. 3/3/3 gets traded over on board. Like, normally 3 mana cards are 3/4s. So this doesn't really fight for board that aggressive. I mean, you can play it on 3 and it's fine. It works with Macaw, but that Overload's not going to win you the game. So I'm skeptical about this. I don't think I like it. It could be cute disruption, right? If your opponent's playing like an OTK deck, but there's not really OTK decks in Standard right now. So like, interesting, probably not good right now. Torgast Custodian, 8 mana, 6/10, Battlecry for each enemy minion. Randomly gain Rush, Divine Shield, or Wind Fury. So if there are 3 enemy minions, this is an 8/6/10 with Rush, Divine Shield, and Wind Fury. It doesn't have Taunt, and it doesn't have Lifesteal. So this card sucks. It's too slow, right? I mean, it's a pretty big threat, though. This card's at least okay. It's not unplayable. This is a lot of stuff. And games aren't ending on turns 5 or 6, unless you're against Rogue, mostly. So like this could be okay. But without Taunt or Lifesteal, this gets ignored very, very often. So I think this is too slow. Which brings us to the point that Shaman didn't get too much. Alright. Warlock. Arson Accusation. 2 mana fire spell. That's actually relevant because of multicaster. Choose a minion. Destroy it after your hero takes damage. So it's 4 mana, draw a card, take 2 damage, kill a minion. And you proc multicaster. And you can kill your own minion off. This card's insane. Cool. Next. Imposter. 2 mana, 1/1, Battlecry. Choose a friendly imp. Transform into a copy of it. This is okay, but kind of slow. Imp Warlock needs a bit of early tempo. And Imp Curse Warlock is a bit more okay as we go on through the game because you can fall back on curses. But then you don't want these conditional cards that don't actually work unless you're ahead on board, because that's the whole point of the curses, right? So this is going to dilute the curses if we want to, or the starting imp. This is okay. This isn't really great. In a more all-in Zoo deck, this might be playable, but I don't think this is really the direction Warlock's going in right now. And finally, Habeas Corpses. 3 mana Shadow Spell. Discover a friendly minion to resurrect and give it Rush. It dies at the end of the turn. So you res a minion, so it has to be in the res pool. It comes back to life, it gets Rush, and then it dies. So good with Death Rattles, right? But it requires you to have played big stuff. This could be okay in like some sort of bigger Warlock. That 4 mana summon a, what is it called? 4 mana summon a demon based on how big your hand is. That could be okay with this. Interesting. I don't think this is bad. but I don't immediately see it being broken. So it's probably okay. This doesn't currently fit the Warlock archetypes we really want, is the problem. Which means that we have to find a different archetype, which means it's just probably not worth it. Because this isn't enough to push an archetype. Okay. Next up, Warrior. Call to the stand, 1 mana spell. Your opponent summons a random minion from their hand. Dirty Rat for Warrior. Cool. So we have Disruption in Warrior now. I'm okay with this. I like this. This is pretty important. Now we don't lose to Kazakhstan. I say we. I mean, this isn't enough to put Warrior back, but this definitely helps. I like that this card exists. I don't think Control Warrior still is playable, even with the existence of this. I think we're a little bit shy of making it work, but this helps. Weapons Expert, 3 mana, 3/2, Battle Cry. If you have a weapon equipped, give it +1/+1, otherwise draw a weapon. This card is insane. Oh, I did not see this card. Okay, Warrior's back, baby. Bam! This into Outrider's Axe? Okay, this card is actually insane. Alright. Yeah, okay. Warrior's in. Warrior Stonks just went up. Mossworn Bailiff, 5/4/4, Taunt, Battle Cry. If you have 4 more armor, gain 4/4. Illegal. This is good. So it already has Taunt, even if you can't activate the Battle Cry, which is nice and defensive. And then if the Battle Cry is active, it's 5 mana, 8/8 Taunt. Oh, I'm excited. This is good. I hadn't actually seen these Warrior cards outside of Call to the Stand, so this, I'm happy. This was nice. Cool. Warrior's back. And neutral cards. What neutral cards do we have here? The Jailer, 10 mana, 10/10. Battle Cry, destroy your deck. For the rest of the game, your minions are immune. This card's okay. It's like an alternate win condition in Druid. The problem is this alternate win condition doesn't really work in most decks, and even in Druid, it's not great because you have to win the game with what you have on board, and usually 10 mana, 10/10 is without board impact. I mean, I say without board impact. Immune, I don't think is very good board impact because it doesn't have Taunt, right? Or Rush. So it doesn't change the problem if you're dying, right? Whereas some other win conditions do help that, right? Like Onyxia, you clear a board, right? It has Rush, it has Impact. Sorry, Nathria, even if you don't win the game on the spot with him, he does something onto the board. This doesn't. So I'm very skeptical about this as a win condition. Sylvanas the Accused. This card is broken. This is going to be in every single deck that's not incredibly hyper aggro, and even in hyper aggro deck, you might just still run this as your top end, get through a taunt type thing. 6 mana, 5/5, Battle Cry, destroy an enemy minion. That's already insane. Infuse 7, take control of it instead. Stop, please. This card's very good. Soulseeker, 5/3/3, Battle Cry, swap this with a random minion from your opponent's deck. This is really crappy removal. I don't like it. Sorry, removal. This is really, I shouldn't say crappy. This is really high variance disruption. I very much dislike this, right? This is kind of like a Hecklebot, but Hecklebot had some defensive value as well. This also allows counter disruption, right? Because then this goes into their deck, and then they can disrupt you later too. So it's interesting disruption, but I don't think it's powerful enough to just auto include into anything. Tight-Lipped Witness, 3/2/5. Secrets can't be revealed. This really isn't relevant. I don't think Secret Mage is gonna up and, take us to a new meta where Secret Aggro Mage is king. But it's nice that they have some sort of disruption if that does become a problem. So even though this card is not really that insane, I like that it at least exists so that we do have some counterplay if that does become a problem. Afterlife Attendant, 3/3/4. Your infused cards also infuse well in your deck. So 3/3/4s aren't really run without having a pretty high upside, and I don't think this counts as a high upside because most infuse cards right now, not all of them, require, or are kind of used in tempo-oriented decks, and a lot of the time you'd rather be spending your 3 mana developing higher tempo or more broken things, and this is also not really great if you don't have a board. So I'm very skeptical about this. This is like conditional deck infusion, and I don't think that's quite relevant. It might be if we have a hyper tokeny hunter deck, and you might be able to build around that, but I don't know if that has a place in the meta right now. There are some ways to actually take advantage of this, but you'd have to be running like Rodent's Nest and Hunter, which you could do, but it might be a bit too slow for this meta. So I'm skeptical about this. All right, those are all the cards. Hope you enjoyed the review. I'll be playing a bunch of Hearthstone this week to test for the Masters Tour, and I'll be trying out some of the new cards and archetypes. So be sure to tune in, twitch.tv/languagehacker. Hope you guys have a fun mini set. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the content. I'm going to be doing more videos every single week on new decks, whenever new cards come out, etc. So there are good reasons to follow. See ya.